Welcome to the Uncommon CEO podcast, where we unpack the mindset, skills, and wisdom it takes to become an uncommon leader in a common world. With your host, the Uncommon CEO himself, Andrew Smart.
Uncommon CEO podcast once again. Andrew, how was your weekend?
My weekend was fantastic. Really, I would say kind of a laid back weekend, but stayed pretty busy. But didn't have a lot of huge activities. Didn't have to be anywhere on that Saturday night. But I did Friday night. Have to watch after some boys that they were over at the house.
A little sleepover action.
Yeah, a little sleepover action. I got to tell you a funny story, Matt, because these are all 7th grade boys. And I got to thinking about what was I like in the 7th grade. And so I reflected on what was my interest, what was I thinking about in 7th grade. So at one point, it was late. It was probably about 7:30, 8 o'clock. Maybe they'd already eaten. I go downstairs, and I'm thinking, these guys, whether it's movies, maybe shooting pool, they're all in my gym.
Really? Huh.
I'm like, what are they doing working out in the gym? It's, at almost 8 o'clock at night. So I go in there, I see my son on the bike, another boy on the elliptical, and this other kid on the bench taking dumbbells. And I think he was the ringleader of this.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah. And so they're working out, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? So they're all, quote, working out. Go in there, talk with them for few minutes, actually help one of the kids as he's lifting weights to make sure he's doing it properly, and then kind of help them move on to the poker table.
Yeah. Get away from you should be lifting weights at your sleepover. Come on.
I mean,
it's kind of fun.
I told you, I reflected on what was I doing in the 7th grade versus what they're doing. Lifting weights, learning to play poker. They played some Risk that night.
Cool.
They watched some movies. So great boys. I think I was thinking about girls in the 7th grade.
I had my first girlfriend in 7th grade.
I think I did too.
I had no idea what to do. I'll tell you that much.
Right. Correct. But these guys, I kind of kidded them. I said, hey, you guys got some girlfriends, girls you're interested in? And they didn't really follow me, on that one. But give it time. Great group of young boys, and it's cool to see them kind of evolve. I will say this: there's a little thing that kind of somewhat bothers me in the generation that we're raising today, and here's what it is, Matt. Every day we operate in a competitive world. We live in a business world where competition is everything. It's a competitive world, and you got to be focused. You got to be out front, and every day that if you're not in that mindset, then someone's going to take you out. Here's my problem there. We push that competition. I think this is me, somewhat at a too early age nowadays. That we don't allow children to just be children.
Sure.
And you're talking from a highly competitive person. I'm competitive.
Oh yeah.
And so when we look at our children at this young age and this early age development, that many parents or people of influence, they're looking at their children at this young age, and they want them to be this great athlete or this great scholar, or whatever they want to push them in. And I think that's, to me, a little disheartening, because I always want my children to have the experience of, obviously, the value of hard work and commitment. Okay, so when you're in something, hard work and commitment. But I want them to look back in their life and said, and I had a great childhood in the sense that I enjoyed some of the just being a kid. Because Matt, when you look back in your life, don't you just have some memories of just being a kid and thinking, God, that was great. I didn't have all this other stuff in life that just kind of pressured me. I enjoyed these moments of just being a kid.
Yeah, like I had a friend growing up that his parents were grooming him to be a baseball player, and he had all this fancy gadgets in their garage with you'd hit the bat through these wheels and all this stuff. And what I look back and remember was just being in the backyard and trying to hit a tennis ball as far as I possibly could. And I played baseball.
That was fun to do.
But yeah, it was mad fun. And that's the part I remember more than the competitive side of things and being like, well, if you're not first, you're last, which I think is
it was. I have a friend growing up. He's on the PGA. You know him, Lucas Glover.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going over to his house at a young age, and his grandfather, very successful guy. He was doing kind of what Tiger Woods' dad was doing to him, because I mean, kind of somewhat the same age. Very structured, very disciplined, really pushing him to be successful. And candidly, he was successful. I mean, he was successful in high school. He went to Clemson and was a successful golfer, and then became a PGA golfer and actually won a championship in the PGA.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I also know this because I know Lucas from my youth. I think that if he was sitting here with us talking, he would talk about all the things he gained in the sense of being able to have these skills. But I think he'd also look at some of the things that he wishes he could have back.
Yeah, you miss a lot when you're focused so much on, so far out the line and, becoming a professional where it takes those, what do they say, LeBron James had to take like 100,000 shots to get to where he's at, it takes a lot to separate you from the pack.
It's one of the things, I have different people that I love to study. And for years, one of those guys was Kobe Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
So I love studying Kobe. Grew up in a Michael Jordan age, obviously.
Yeah.
And Kobe was kind of like almost a son to Michael Jordan. But Kobe had a dad. And what Kobe's dad brought to Kobe was balance.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm going to push you to be your best, but I want you a balance in life. I want you to have that balance in life. And so I'm a big believer in that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to push my children, Drew and Claire, to be their best. I mean, I had Drew here over the weekend. I'll show you a video later. I had him doing rope drills, had him carrying weights, had him doing all kind of tough stuff. But I also want them to have balance in life.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't want like sports just to be the only thing. Here's the deal: when they get a little older, when they get into high school and kind of their bodies start to fine tune and they start to say, okay, hey, I can be really good at this, then we can start really putting that emphasis there. But right now in 7th grade,
let them have
kids.
fun. Yeah, just play around, explore the woods, do the things that kids like to do.
Yeah, I mean, these kids, and I'll finish up and we'll move on from here. I mean, I hear kids today, these young kids, I hear kids, that, well, my parents had me on a restricted diet plan, protein shakes, can only take in 70 to 80 carbs a day. It's crazy.
No, I let my daughter buy Lucky Charms yesterday, so just have fun.
What kid doesn't like Lucky Charms?
I know, right?
I was more of a Fruity Pebbles kind of guy when I was a kid.
She was reaching for the Fruity Pebbles, but she saw that unicorn on the package and it was game over.
They know what they're doing.
Yep.
They know what they're doing, marketing. And, that's a great, tipping off point into where I want to go today. Because when you have that kind of unicorn package on a Lucky Charms, when this very highly successful company like Kellogg or Post, because those are two highly brands, brands, and there's an interesting story about how they became big. When you have two companies like that are marketing to children, they put that image on there, they're attacking a part of the brain. Okay, they're not attacking the conscious mind of your child's brain. They're attacking the subconscious mind of your child's brain. And so when your daughter sees that, she has a conscious reaction to it, and we're going to talk about what that means. And then, but there's a subconscious feeling towards it.
Oh yeah, she associates unicorns with good times.
And what child doesn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
She'd never had them before. So yeah, she didn't know she liked it. It wasn't a going back to it. Something
she liked
swayed
it,
her.
didn't she?
Of course she did.
That's where they add in a lot of the sugar and all the other things.
Where I got hell from my wife for picking up Lucky Charms.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Well, so the conscious side. Okay, let's talk about what is a conscious mind. So when we talk, we've talked a lot about mindset. We spend a lot of time talking the mind. And the reason why we talk about the mind is because the mind dictates everything. Mm-hmm. Everything in life is dictated by the mind. It's what leads everything. And so when we talk about consciousness, when we talk about this mindset of consciousness, what are we saying?
You're saying whatever is present is one part of consciousness, and what you can recognize as impactful. Whereas subconscious, you might not know why you're being impacted. With conscious, you know why the action as a reaction takes place.
Yes. So consciously, we take in information that we can see, we can feel, they can run all the senses, right? Mm-hmm. So your daughter, from this Lucky Charms, experience, she saw something that triggered her. Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting. It triggered her on a conscious level, but impacted her on a subconscious level because she's seeing, this unicorn, but somewhere in the back of her mind, unicorns mean something to her, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's this triggering and leading effect. So, but consciously is all about what we can see, what we can feel, what we can touch, what we can hear, what we can smell. It's what we live in, that kind of daily action of how our mind works. Mm-hmm. Okay. In the conscious mind. Interesting thing about the conscious mind, though, is we see it. I mean, that you and I can sit here and we can have this conversation and we can consciously kind of walk through this conversation. But the truth is, if we go weeks, months, definitely years down the road, our conscious mind is not going to remember a lot about this time together.
Yeah.
It just does not, that mind does not facilitate a deep memory. So that deep memory is put into this other mind called the subconscious mind. And so I have spent a good many years with some really highly gifted, talented people on this subconscious work and why this subconscious mind really kind of dictates our whole life. Mm-hmm. And so we want to dive into how the subconscious mind operates. Every day, Matt, you go through your week, you show up, you got this routine, you go to work, right? Mm-hmm. You talked about something we got to do this afternoon. And you've got other things on your list.
Yeah,
okay?
Your schedule, very conscious part of your life.
Yeah. So the truth is about 90 to 95% of what you're going to wake up to and what you're going to operate towards, you're not going to really remember. Okay. So 90 to 95% of that active lifestyle is not a rememberable deal. That's not what you remember. However, it doesn't mean that you're not taking in points through that process. They're not being filed away into the memory of your brain. Mm-hmm. So imagine this, okay? It's like a computer. When you left work on a Friday, did you leave your computer here? Did you take it home? What did you do?
Depends. This time I left it here.
Okay. Was it hooked up? Was it running? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that computer, while you weren't using it, and while you weren't actively going and doing things on it, it was still running.
Yeah.
So there were activities happening in that computer that didn't require you actively in a conscious way making them happen.
Sure. Emails still came in regardless.
Yes. Emails.
Scan for
Might have been scanning for something. Could have been, there's multiple tasks happening, throughout that computer that don't require your action. Mm-hmm. Same thing goes, with your brain. There are multiple things that are going on in your mind that don't require an action.
You don't have to think about breathing or your heart beating or any of the physical.
Well, it's funny you saying about that. Okay, so so when we talk about the subconscious mind, okay, you didn't wake up this morning and said, okay, I need to take a breath.
Yeah, it just happens. And if you think about breathing, it becomes kind of difficult, or it is changes how it is.
Well, we're going to get into that. So, I mean, you're right. You didn't go say, hey, I got to take a breath. Oh, by the way, hey, make sure that heart's beating. No, it's happening. Okay, but it's being regulated by a part of your mind that you're not constantly thinking on. And what you just said was right. So if you start to think on that, what happens?
It becomes almost a labor at a certain point where you get in your own head about those sorts of activities, and makes it tougher to breathe if you think hard about, I need to breathe. Where's my next breath coming from, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and since you're taking it down that road, which I was going to get there anyway, on breathing and regulation, I don't know if you've ever experienced a panic attack.
Yeah, something close to it.
Okay, so for people who have dealt with anxiety, panic attacks, the interesting thing, when you try to focus in on your panic attack, or when you try to like hone in, okay, on that particular issue, what happens?
Most of the time, it just makes it worse.
It does make it worse. It does make it worse, because then you're trying to counterbalance the conscious and subconscious mind, and all of a sudden you're stirring up what has already been set into a regulatory mind of how to deal with something. And so the truth is, there are techniques they teach people who deal with panic attacks. What do they teach them? They almost teach them, how to slow down, work on your breathing. Breathing exercises are critical to handling panic issues. I've actually done that in meetings that we've had. How many times have I started a meeting and said, okay, we're going to stop right here. We're going to take a few moments, and we're going to go through a breathing exercise.
Conscious breathing.
Conscious breathing. And it's interesting when you go through conscious breathing and you start really taking in these controlled breaths, the diaphragm breaths, pushing it and how to push them out, that how many breaths do you really need versus how many we take in?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when we would do it, it would be 3 to 4 breaths a minute, but when you aren't thinking about it, you're like a little hummingbird out there.
Yeah, we're clicking them off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yet when we slow down, allow the subconscious mind to kick in, our breathing regulates, and all of a sudden we don't need that many breaths. But in this deep work of subconscious versus conscious mind, what I've learned in working with these people, and one in particular, that the subconscious mind and the conscious mind actually can't really tell the difference between each other. So what we deal with consciously, okay, what we see and what we go through, what your daughter saw on, this Lucky Charms, okay, the distinguishing between the two minds they're one and the same. And while they operate differently, they are one and the same. And so we often, try to act like, we consciously deal with this, but, we don't think about the subconscious. Having done the work in the subconscious and going into this deeper deal, and so let me speak on that just a second. I wasn't a big believer in hypnosis.
Sure.
It just didn't really, as a guy who considers myself, pretty logical, strong-minded person, it was hard for me to buy into that you could put me into a hypnotic state and take me into a deeper level of my mind until I had it done. And my first experience of going into this process of this deep conscious, subconscious, hypnotic mind was an incredible experience, and one of what I would consider, I don't want to use the word traumatic, is not. It was actually the exact opposite. It was just very opening to what what I have in that side of my mind that I don't recognize daily. What's in that mind?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you probably subconsciously bury down there over time, good or bad.
And we all do it. We all have inside our subconscious mind things within our life that dictate our whole life. And so when I took my first, dive into my subconscious mind, I came out of that experience I was really emotional. I was really tired. It was like, wow, because there's so much there in that part of our mind. And so, recognizing that approach and beginning that work, with people I work with, I saw then, okay, this is impacting my life. This is playing into so many of my decisions, good and bad. Okay. And so the subconscious mind actually is the mind that dictates most of our life. And so we want to think that our conscious mind and our logic and reason mind does. No, it's a subconscious mind. It is what dictates. When we've talked about habits before, our subconscious mind really dictates most of our good habits and bad habits. Think about it from a therapeutic standpoint. When you deal with people who have major abuse issues in whether it's narcotics, you can go through the whole list, okay? What is the reason why they're doing that? When someone chooses to take an opioid, why do they do it?
Because they just want to feel better or push away the bad.
Okay, they want to feel better. And they want to push away the bad. Okay, but where are they feeling the pain?
It depends. In their conscious bodies where they're feeling the pain. It could be physical pain. It could be emotional toil. All of that, very conscious feelings.
Okay, glad you brought that up. You're right. This is a little bit of a psychosomatic deal, okay, where we start feeling pain. Okay, but where is that underlying pain? It's coming from the subconscious mind. Okay, so they take, whether it's alcohol, pills, to subdue a deeper pain, that is impacting this conscious deal. And so they're trying to subdue this deeperness. But it is the subconscious mind that is ultimately playing out here. That's why, a lot of the top therapists, are constantly working on the subconscious reasons for why they're taking these actions. What are the underlying effects, right?
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't just necessarily have to be in those arenas. We do this in other areas of our life. Subconsciously, we have these others. Why do subconsciously many of us wake up every day and the first thing we do is go to our email?
Because you've got this compulsion. Subconscious leads to habit and compulsion. So it may be that you're compelled to see what's there. It may be that you figure that's what's going to frame your day up a lot of times, and you start there.
Why do we have so many people? You go out to a restaurant and you see a family sitting there and all of them are on different devices.
Drives me nuts, but yeah.
Okay, but how common is that today?
Way more than it should be.
Okay, but it's not I don't think if you went up to any of those people and you consciously asked them a question, said, hey, when you're out with your dinner, with your family, are you engaged with your family? What do you think they'd say?
It's a yes. We're engaged.
They would say this. But subconsciously, what happens is they get into this rhythm that they go out there and then they take these actions that we all see. Everybody's on their phone, everybody's disconnected, and these are all in our subconscious mind. And their subconscious mind plays out in so many freaking areas of our life. And the biggest one, and the reason I bring that up is because the biggest one is relationships. And relationships dictate everything of our life.
Yep.
And so, I mean, you don't have a relationship with your phone. You don't have a relationship with a computer. You don't have relationships with objects that don't. I mean, it is our subconscious mind is all into our relationship mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why our subconscious mind is so critical to us being successful. And this is where the deep work, and here's the funny part. And we talk about being, when we talk about uncommonness, okay, uncommon is all about, people who approach things in a different way. Okay, well, approaching things in a different way means approaching things in a deeper way too.
Mm-hmm.
And so uncommon, approach and uncommon leadership is also how do I approach deeper? This area is an area that, we have to improve on in leadership to be effective. Talked about kind of like, all right, this is where, our subconscious mind dictates this. And we've talked about how it can be non-effective, but what can we do in our subconscious mind to be effective?
I mean, I think just learning in general can impact your subconscious mind. Habits, good habits can impact your subconscious mind, and working on your mind. Like you said, it's a muscle like everything else that you've got to stretch it and work it, and it becomes stronger and more able to, be aware and be present.
So you're right. Our habits, which we've talked about many times, dictate a lot of our patterns. What are our habits? What are our routines? What are the things we get up on? And I'm going to do a deeper dive, maybe in another podcast sometime, that will talk about how, truly successful people work on those habits. But habits are critical, and we've talked about habits. Okay, but there's also other elements that we can take, to help us work into our subconscious level to be more effective. Guarantee routines. Routines are habits, right? Okay. Our routines are habits, are rewards. So we know if we got good routines, if we
have good results.
We get good routines. Good routines, help us create a cycle of good results. But what are other things within our subconscious mind that we need to work on? Because if you think about some people really put down the idea of positive thinking, don't they?
Some people do. I'm a huge proponent of it, and a healthy mindset impacts everything else. And optimism is probably one of my number one traits that I focus on.
The power of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the power of that positive thinking. Okay, the interesting part of positive thinking is rooted into our mind of belief. Okay, that's where it's rooted. I go back to when we talk about, there's a lot of positive gurus out there, aren't there?
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's many guys, that do a lot of promotion on positive thinking, mindset, and amp you up pretty hard. But if you go back to what I consider the main guru, Jesus, he was a positive thinker, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he taught a belief of, what you can do if you believe you can do it, and it doesn't take that much belief. That's the funny thing about it is just a little bit of positive in a forward direction can create a lot of momentum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a subconscious level of thinking. And rooted into that positive deal. And guess what happens when you get a lot of positive, or you get a little bit of positive momentum going around other positive, it starts creating a lot of positive, right?
A snowball effect.
Snowball.
Yeah.
Positive. And that's deep in the subconscious. There's an active side, but there's a subconscious mentality to positive thinking.
Mm-hmm. And when you're down, it does the same thing.
Really working on that, you got to think about tools, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Tools of life, tools, that we bring every day. In that toolbox of life, if we want to be effective in our mind, we can't just bring one tool, right?
That's right. I got a workshop full.
Well, you're a workshop kind of guy, man.
Yeah, true.
And, to be, in that subconscious mind and that subconscious work, to be highly effective, we can't do it all with a hammer, right?
Sometimes you need a drill press or a sliding miter saw.
Yeah, you need
for the right
tools.
job.
And so we bring up the fact that positive thinking is really important. But let's talk about the subconscious. What are things that we can do daily? I'm talking about things I do.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I do daily, when I get up in the morning and I work out, okay, I listen to something that's usually inspirational or positive. Why do you think I do that?
Well, it sets you in the right mindset for the rest of the day.
I want to feed my brain positive information. It's important, okay? So it's kind of like someone who you go into their office. You ever go into somebody's office and they got some positive quote?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They put it up there. And I've had many people work for me that fulfill their office with positive quotes. I have one that
saying just hang in there.
Just hang in there. It's the positive quotes. When you see people who put positive quotes in their office, in their home, why do they do it?
It's just a reminder. It's something, if your mind goes off track, to kind of just hone you back into the right mindset.
And I think they recognize that they need it.
Mm-hmm.
I think subconsciously, whether they recognize this or not, they recognize they need it. So having this ability to have around them at any given point some quote, some thought, something that says, hey, this is positive. This is positive. What about positive affirmation?
Yeah, people, I don't think they like to admit how important it is, but you've got to give it, and it's nice to receive it.
Anyone who says that they don't want positive affirmation is an effing liar.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. People can be humble about it, but at the same time, you've got to hear it sometimes too.
The problem with affirmation, and this is subconscious too, okay? The problem with affirmation, and I don't want to get too far down this road, is that in our subconscious mind, we can battle this thing of affirmation because in our subconscious mind, while there are a lot of things that motivate us, there are a lot of pain in there too. There's a lot of pain, and our affirmation can be dealt with in many ways within our mind. So I think it's important to always put that positive word inside of affirmation, because I think we have known stories and we've known people who unfortunately seek a lot of negative affirmation.
Sure.
And I think that whenever you see that, that's feeding something deeper and wounded in them. In some of my deep work, where a therapist has taken me into some of my childhood and some of my areas of trauma, issues, things that I've gone through, was to constantly reinforce positive affirmation, positive things, not to reinforce the trauma and the negative things. So, we know that this positive feedback loop is incredibly important. But another area to focus on in the subconscious mind is to emphasize something I've talked about before too, is the Pareto principle, which for those who are familiar with the term Pareto, it's basically the 80-20 rule. Okay, and it's about how you emphasize your energies and your effort.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we too often put our energy and efforts where?
Well, I mean, there's things that don't make a difference is probably where we put a lot of our efforts, or we put a lot of our efforts into maybe the negative side of things or avoiding the bad as opposed to honing the good.
We'll put all this effort, we'll put 80% effort on something that only produces 20% results.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, that's a subconscious deal. Case in point, great leadership deal. All leaders have dealt with this. Myself, every leader who's been a mentor in my life, people in family, okay? Think about this. If you're a leader at any level, in family, business, at anywhere, how often do we find ourselves spending 80% of our time with 20% of the associations of our life, meaning those people who love to suck energy of our life?
I mean, a lot of times the people that need the energy certainly seek it out more than those that don't. So it ends up taking up, it becomes a time suck.
Whether they need it or not, they're going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I take need out of it. They're going to take it. And so you spend 80% of your energy constantly dealing with those. I mean, in business, we spend so much energy in correcting those issues that are being caused by a very small group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's anywhere you go. I heard Nick Saban, talk about, that he recognized how he was constantly, almost every day, spending all of his time with the players he had that had problems or disciplinary issues. And so what he consciously did, because he recognized this subconsciously, what he was doing was that he turned the tables on and said, okay, we're going to start actively spending more time around these players who are doing the right things.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And while we got to deal with these players, we're not going to spend all of our time with that. We're going to consciously make sure we're taking every bit amount of time with the players who are doing the right things, because these players are taking up a lot of our time. So that Pareto principle plays out in so many areas of our life. And so it's subconsciously and consciously is to be aware of that. Then taking it a step farther and what we can do to help our subconscious mind improve. Okay, we talk about in life goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have goals for this year.
I do.
Yeah, I think we started out the year talking about that kind of stuff. So you have goals. Okay, and did you write down your goals?
I did. I did. At least my ad hoc New Year's resolution side of things. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, do you think it would be good to go back and review your goals?
I do regularly and chastise myself for not quite being where I wanted to be with them. But, they're still there. I know they're there, and you can always work towards them.
A good many years ago, when I created the pillars for this company, the company we work in, that I studied what SMART goals were. I mean, SMART goals, the term was created through a G principle, but I studied what SMART goals were. Okay. And then I shared with y'all, okay, I want to create these SMART goals and then move them to a stretch goals, but SMART goals are important. And when we look at that goal mindset of SMART goals, okay, so we talk about, Matt, do you have specific goals for this year?
So I think it's specific, measurable, actionable, repeatable, achievable,
relevant. And, we talk about time sensitive, they're time bound.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
So everything I set out to do fell into that category. Because I find when you make these round resolutions, and I always like to use the term boil the ocean. If you're always trying to boil the ocean, you're never going to get a bubble to the top.
These are actionable items that play into the subconscious mind. So when you have them and they're repeated, they play into your subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's important to have those kind of things. And then bringing them back and staying positive in it. I can't reemphasize the amount of importance behind the positive mindset behind them, that you can achieve those. Because when you set out to do those goals, when you set out to lay that out, is dealing with the positive. It's the positive mindset of overcoming things. One of the things that I have focused in my life of always moving forward and always growth is that growth is always about overcoming.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go into that subconscious mind of working through that overcoming mind, because in that part of your mind is where that deeper determination lies. So the subconscious mind truly does dictate our life. The conscious mind might allow us to kind of just work through the daily, action of life, but it doesn't really dictate our life. Mm-hmm. The subconscious mind, it dictates our life, and it dictates every aspect in every relationship. And so the more that we can be in tune into the subconscious mind, the more effective and the more joy we'll have in life.
One thing we try to do on the show is the 4th and goal, what's the one big idea to help you punch it into the end zone at the end?
I think going back, to what I talked about, writing down your clear objectives and doing what I believe. Okay, so having a process that you will take to look at you and your life and see where you're at in your life, and having a daily process to go through that every day. It becomes a repetitive action towards your subconscious mind. And one of those processes needs to be, whether, it's meditation for you or, it's prayer, you need to have that time to allow your mind to think through these kind of things. And so I try to work daily to have that time to allow my mind to process through this.
Thanks for joining us today on the Uncommon CEO podcast. Subscribe to our show wherever you get podcasts. We have video episodes on our YouTube channel and more uncommon wisdom on our social media. Find all our links and resources at uncommonceopodcast.com. For Andrew Smart and all of us here at the Uncommon CEO, stay uncommon.